Character says a lot about you. Your character candle is as important as your life candle. Your character is the way you behave. Sometimes you exhibit this without even knowing. Your temper, your disposition, your attitude. It's your character. Your character can make you or ruin you. Now, if your character candle is dark and cold, that means your life candle is going to end up being dark and cold. There are so many great men and women who actually found their candle. They added value to the world, but there was a character trait, something inside of them that they didn't work on. And it ended up doing what? Destroying their life or not making them phenomenal as was planned. So right here, I'm going to take you through a few great men and women who were actually phenomenal. They found their candle, knew their candle, but their character candle was dark and cold, or there was something in their character that wasn't worked on. And then what happened at the end? It kind of ruined them or didn't allow them to succeed fully. Maybe you do some things in school and you take it for granted or it doesn't matter. The more you stay with those things, the more it gets into you. And when you get older, it now does what? It's waiting for you later in life to destroy your life candle. So character candle is very important. Now you have to discuss, I'm going to take you around. You have to take a deep breath and then think, what are some character traits inside of me that I know that this thing keeps coming? And then when we go through the character museum right now, I want to, when I'm going through the men, if there's anything you see in any man or any woman and you think is something you also do, then you might just have to cut it off. That's why we're here, because we're here to become the best versions of ourselves. Remember, this is the basics of life planning course. You plan your life by starting with your character. So, number one, Miriam. Miriam was one great woman. She was one of the greatest people that society in the life, the children of Israel. You can't talk about the children of Israel without talking about her. She was good, she was a poet, she was a singer, she was a deliverer, she was a warrior, she was a strong woman. She was Moses' sister. But one of the character traits she has inside of her was gossiping, backbiting, envy, lack of submission to authority. That made her character was dark and cold. And you know what? She ended up becoming leprous. Leprosy. And then you can imagine that when you're leprous, you're cut out from society. Luckily, too, her brother David prayed, and then her brother Moses prayed, and then, but she got leprosy for a while, and she was cut off. Anger, gossip, backbiting, envy, lack of submission to authority. So I need you to check your life. Do you like submitting, or you don't submit? Sometimes you have the class prefect, but you'd feel I'm not going to submit to the class prefect. It's a character trait that you have to work on. What about gossip? She actually gossiped. She and her other sibling, Aaron, were gossiping about Moses. Backstabbing. They pretended as if they loved Moses while he wasn't there. They started backstabbing him. Then envy and jealousy. These are bad character traits. If you have this inside of you, your character is dark and cold. Then just uproot it. You can do it. That's why you're here. Then, right, I have another great man. Jonah. Jonah was one great prophet. He had his candle. His candle was going to deliver people, to talk to people about God, to actually send the message of hope to generations and to countries. But Jonah had this bad character trait. Stubborn. He was bad-tempered. He was arrogant. He was disobedient, and he avoided responsibility. That made his candle dark and cold. And then, of course, we know how he ended up in the belly of a fish, in the belly of a whale. So I needed to look at your character. But luckily, because he was able to find out that his character was dark and cold, he went to God in prayer, and then he actually did say, oh God, I'm really sorry, and all of that. And then what happened? He was able to, his character became good. So it's a choice. I want you to look at Jonah. Are you stubborn? Are you bad-tempered? Are you arrogant? Do you avoid responsibilities? You're always trying to pass on responsibilities. Oh, it wasn't me, it was this person. Are you disobedient? Sometimes you think you're a child, but these things will wait for you later. When you have this inside of you, your character is dark and cold. And you know the good thing, if these people were able to get it out of their life, you can actually get this out of your life. If you're somebody that is looking at becoming great tomorrow, then what do? I also have some bad character traits inside of me, but I was able to get rid of them. And I'm still working on them. It's not over. So I need you to look at this. Who are you? What exactly is happening? Then another great man was Moses. Moses. I mean, you can't talk about the Bible without talking about Moses. Moses was one of the greatest men that ever lived in history. Till today, he's still a very great man. But Moses had some bad character traits that made his character dark and cold. Moses had anger. He was a great man. His candle was, he was a great leader. One of his candle was leadership. One of his candle, he loved God. He was a good man. He had compassion, but he had anger and temper. And because of that, when he worked so hard to get the children of Israel into the promised land, he ended up seeing the promised land, but he didn't get in. Your character, once your character is dark and cold, when there's a bad character trait in you, it might actually ruin your life candle. So you have to be careful to work on them. It is a very important character trait. Now, right, we have another great man. We have another great man as we continue this journey. Achan. Achan was a great family man. He was a happy man. Everybody liked him and all of that. He had a great family and all of that. But his character candle was dark and cold. He was disobedient, he was covetous, and he stole. And after a while, stealing became a part of him. He died in a very bad way. He was stoned to death. His family, he had a tragic end. Why? Because of covetion. Do you always, when you see your friend have something, you want to have something, you keep wanting and wanting and wanting and wanting? You're disobedient. He was given an instruction, don't touch these things. He went ahead, and then that was how his character was dark and cold. He loved stealing. If you're always taking things that don't belong to you and you say, oh, it doesn't matter, it's my mom's thing, or it's my brother's thing, before you know it, it might get into something bigger. Now, no matter how far you go in life, if your character candle is dark and cold, it will destroy you later in life. So what do? Uproot it now. Then we have another great man as we continue, King Solomon. Is there anybody that doesn't know about King Solomon? King Solomon was a great guy. King Solomon was a very great guy, one of the greatest kings that ever lived in history, one of the richest kings that ever lived in history. But his character was dark and cold. He had a dark and cold character trait. What were these character traits that ruined him? It ruined him, and not only him, the whole of that community, the whole of Israel was ruined. A king, he loved fun a lot. Excessive fun-loving life is a bad character. So put it in part of your personal values. He loved fun a lot. He was disobedient, and he loved women. He loved women a lot. And then, what are the things you see inside of you? What are the things in Solomon that you think might be applicable to you? You love being on the internet a lot. You love games a lot. You love hanging out with your friends a lot. You love sleeping a lot. Anything that you do excessively is a bad character trait, and it's going to make your character dark and cold. He was one of the richest kings, wealthiest. They said nobody has been as wealthy as Solomon, but he ended up tragically. Not tragically per se, but his end wasn't very good. It cut off his character. It cut off his life candle. His life candle became dark and cold because his character candle was dark and cold because he loved fun, loved women, and he was disobedient. Are you disobedient? Your parents say things to you, you know the right things to do, but you just go ahead and do the wrong things. I want you to think about your life. Today, you're probably 15 or 16 or 8 or 12. You're going to be 28, you're going to be 38. If you don't work on this character trait, it's still going to follow you. And then it becomes too hard for you to take it out of your life. And it's waiting to ruin your life candle. What bad character does is that it waits to destroy your life candle. So you have to be careful to get it out. Then we have another great man here. Oh my God, looking at him, I think everybody should know him. You should know this great man, Samson. Samson was a great man. His character, his life candle was leadership. He was meant to be a great leader. One of his life candle was his strength. He had strength, he had courage, he was a great leader. He was supposed to lead the children of Israel out of the Philistines and all of that. He was a great warrior. His candle was very bright, and he was actually using his candle. But his character candle was bad. His character candle was really bad. He was very careless. He was careless. He was careless with his lifestyle. He lived his life recklessly, and then he was stubborn. He was very stubborn. He was disobedient. He lived disorderly. His life was not in order. That is why part of your life values or your life part of your personal life value should be to live a life of order. He lived a life of disorder, and he loved women. So I need you to actually think about this. Do you live a very careless life? Today you're on the internet, you post things on the internet, you talk anyhow, you hang out with your friends anyhow. Today your parents tell you to do this when they are not there. His parents actually told him exactly what not to do. But he felt, what's the big deal? He read the Bible, he understood the laws of God, but he was careless with his calling. He knew that his candle was leadership. But he didn't take it seriously. And that was why the people that he was meant to destroy actually destroyed him. And do you know how he ended up? His eyes were gushed out. How can a great leader end up losing his life? Not only that, he ended the other part of his life inside a place, a dungeon, where he was held with rocks. His head was shaved off. Every single thing about him became a disaster because he didn't live an organized life. He played actually with his life candle. He played with his candle. He played with his candle. So whatever your candle is, don't play with it. He was careless with his candle. He knew he has strength, but he was a bit careless. Do not be careless with your candle. Don't be careless with your candle. Living a disorganized, reckless life is a bad character trait. If you live like that, your character is going to end up being dark and cold, and that will also ruin your life candle. And then right here, we have one of the greatest women that ever lived. One of her life candles was leadership. She was a great leader. She was courageous, but her character candle was very dark and cold. Was very dark and cold. Jezebel. She was wicked. She was a bully. She bullied everybody. Anything you had, as long as she knew you had something she liked, she took it away from you. She was very aggressive. She was disrespectful. She had no respect for even God. She was adamant. Whenever she wanted something, she insisted that she must get it. Are you adamant? When you want something, you tell the parents, if I don't have this thing now, there's going to be trouble in this house, and you go ahead throw tantrums. She was quarrelsome. She quarreled with everybody in the house. She was vengeful. She was always ready to get revenge. She was violent. She didn't fear anybody. She was domineering. She was a bully. She was manipulative. If she wanted something, she would talk to you. She would come to you and look for ways to get it out of you. She was hot-tempered and she was forceful. Her character was dark and cold. She had leadership potentials and she was great. But how did she die? She was thrown out of the window and dogs licked her blood and ate her bones. This was a great woman that was supposed to change her world using her leadership candle, because she had strong leadership candle and she was strong. Now, maybe you have strong leadership candle and then you're not using it in the right way. She had a candle, but she didn't use her leadership candle in the right way. Why? Also because her character candle was dark and cold. So if your character candle is dark and cold, that could also turn everything around. If you're into leadership, you don't use it for the wrong way. You don't use it the wrong way. Your character candle, if it's dark and cold, it is something we must all work on, because that could run you. Then we have another king. Now look at this king. Imagine a king looking like this. This is called a king going mad. This is one of the kings that went mad. I mean, look at him. King Saul. He was a very handsome, good-looking king. One of the first kings that ever lived. His character candle was also leadership. He was a great king. But his character candle was dark and cold. He was envious. Envy. If you're envious of your friends and people around you, it's a bad character trait. That means your character is dark and cold. He was cunning. Very cunning, tricky. He was hasty. If you always do things in a hurry without thinking, it's a bad character trait. It could make your character candle dark and cold. He was impatient. He never had patience for anything. When he wanted something, he wanted it now. His character candle was dark and cold. He was disobedient and he was a people's pleaser. Peer pressure. He wanted everybody to like him. That was one of the greatest dark and cold thing he ever did. He wanted everybody to like him. He was a people's pleaser. And then do you know the worst? The people that he wanted so much to like him ended up never liking him. Because the truth is that if you have your candle, people will naturally come to you. But because he didn't know who he was. The people that he was meant to actually show light, he wasn't trying to please them. And that was how he destroyed himself. Your character is very important. Do you like people hanging around you and you do everything for them to remain your friends? It's a bad character trait. You're always following people. You want to be this person's friend. Look at Saul. That was how he ended up. He was a great man, but he didn't know who he was. Now, if you don't know who you were, if you don't know who you are, you could end up actually throwing away and turning off your own candle. Your character candle is very important. Is very important. Nobody wants to end up like Saul. And then we have this man, and I'm sure you're wondering, why is he all wrapped up? He's all wrapped up because he had leprosy. He was a great man. Who had a great candle, and his life was promising. He was meant to take over from a great prophet that ever lived. But he ended up having leprosy. Not only that, Everybody in his family, his generation, ended up having leprosy just because of him. He became cursed. Why? Character. Lying. His name is Gehazi. Lying. If lying comes naturally for you, I want to beg you, you have to take it out of your life, because it's going to wait for you later in life and it's going to destroy you. Lack of self-control. Whenever he saw anything he liked, he wanted it so badly. He didn't have self-control. And then greed. Greed. These are the three things that destroyed this man. A great man who had a bright light candle to touch the world through his prophetic gift, through his prophetic candle, ended up what? Having leprosy. Not only him, but giving leprosy to his whole community. I need you to think about this. Do you lie and then you think you lie for fun? The thing is that you're growing. If you don't take care of these things and uproot it now, it's going to wait for you later in life. That all of these guys I just took you through, all of these things will happen in their life as children. It happened in their life as children. But they took it like, oh, it's one of those things. It's one of those things. It's one of those things. They didn't know that they didn't take it out. Now, have you ever seen a small plant? When you see a small plant, usually what happens when you see a small plant? When you see a small plant, you can actually just pick it out and then immediately you uproot it. But when something becomes a tree, can you uproot it? No, you can't uproot it when something becomes a tree. So that is actually what happened to those guys. Now that you're young, any character that's inside of you, like lying, greed, envy, disobedience, excessive love for women, carelessness, living a life of disorder, gossip, backbiting, stealing, cunning, impatient, people's pleaser, all of these things, now you're young. So it's like a young plant. You have to consciously decide that I want this out of my life now that you know that if you retain this, your character is going to be dark and cold. But if you leave it on, it's going to become like a tree. And for you to uproot a tree, it takes more effort. And once you can take it up, it will destroy you later in life. I remember when I was young, I stole, like the other guy said in class, I and my cousin, we always love stealing from the tuck shop. And one day we stole egg. Imagine just egg. It's not like I couldn't buy egg. But we always had it, we always thought it was fun when we went and stole and nobody saw us. And we didn't know that the man already knew we were coming to steal every day in his stock shop. So one day, he planned for us, and when we came in, we were on our way out, and he held our hands. Right inside of my pocket, he brought out 2 eggs. Inside of my cousin's pocket, he brought out 2 eggs. And guess what happened to us? The whole school. And then my candle in school was very bright because I was an actor. I was in GS2, and I was the president of the Debating and Acting Society, the junior category. Juniors, people liked me a lot, and I was a very good dancer. I used to represent the school in acting, in drama, and all of these things. But you won't believe what that thing did to me. For the whole of that term, I couldn't go for meetings. I couldn't go for any school presentation. They humiliated us, took us around the whole school. And people liked me a lot, but this was something that once you do any bad thing, people will remember what you used to do before. And I used to do it a lot and a lot. I had fun with my cousin. We would laugh. Today we stole 2 eggs. I didn't know that thing was waiting to ruin me. If you've been doing these things and you've been getting away with it, I'm telling you, it happened to me. For the whole of that time, I was so embarrassed. But after that humiliation, I made a promise to myself that I will never steal or take anything that doesn't belong to me. That was when I said, that was when I knew. Do you know what it did to me? My character, my life candle in school then became dark and cold. My acting, I couldn't act. Seniors didn't like me for that whole time. They used to talk about me. Anytime I was working about something about me, I couldn't participate in any school. Even the last school project, that's a competition, all of that. I never did anything in school. My candle was dark and cold. Why? Because my character candle was trying to turn out my life candle. And that was when I made a promise. What I did was I wrote a letter. I apologized to the school authority. I actually swallowed my shame. But throughout that time, I was walking about to school like a thief. And that was the end. But I made a promise. Now I was in GS2 or GS3, I can't remember. But that was when I made a promise to myself that never will I take anything that doesn't belong to me. Even if that thing is looking at me right in my eye. And since then, I've been free. You are the one. Imagine if I was still doing it and getting away with it. Maybe today I'll enter a gold shop, and if they will not watch, and I'm like, oh, I've been doing this all my life, nobody will know, and I'll just steal a jewelry. And then maybe they catch me and say, oh, look at that one that's always on TV. Boom, I'll be on social media. So anything that you're doing now, if you don't take it out of your life, if you don't operate it like a small plant, it's going to become like a tree. Your character candle cannot be dark and cold. If you have any of these things in your life, it's a character candle that is dark and cold. So you have to personally take it out. I made up my mind that enough of this. This almost ruined me. I was in jail, so I was a young child, but I can still remember. And from that day, I said no. Now I still have a few bad things that are making my character dark, but I'm trying to work on it. So every day you have to be conscious. So one of the things I want you to do today, I want you to write down all of the things that you think are dark and cold in your character. All of the character traits that is making your character dark and cold. I want you to think about it. What are those things that you do that you know that these things are not right? That is your character. What you do that you know is not right, but you always do it and you get away with it. You don't think it matters. That's your character. Do you have a bad attitude? When your parents talk to you, you're always grumbling. Is a character. Are you a lazy person? Is a character. Do you lie even when it's not necessary? It's a character. Are you hasty? It's a character. Are you disorganized? Your room is always dirty. Everything about you is disorganized. It's a character. How do you dress? You like dressing rough and looking rough? It's a character. You like stealing? It's a character. Greed. Are you a bully? Every time you go to school, people that you know that are not as good as you bully them, you intimidate them. It's a character. What are the things that you do? You are the only person that knows. But anything that is not good is dark and cold, and it's going to ruin your character. And at the end, it's not going to ruin your beautiful life candle. There's a candle in everybody. Your life candle and your character candle, they all work hand in hand. And then I'm going to also talk about one phenomenal man, Joseph. Joseph was phenomenal. His character was phenomenal. So for part of your homework today, I want you to write out every single thing that you know that is dark and cold in you. Write it down. Be honest to yourself. And then start writing things that you're going to use to replace them. You know, we're talking about life planning. If you don't write it down, I faced my own. Look at me, I'm not ashamed to tell you about what I did, but because later I stopped it. I stood in that class, in that talk shop for like the whole of my first term and second term. And they caught me in the third term. Thank God they even caught me then. So you have to be open. Write down all the things that you do. Are there things you look at sites, you go to sites that you know that are wrong? You watch videos and shows you know that are wrong. It's a bad character trait. It's going to wait for you later to do something to your life candle. Is it anger? Ben Carson was always angry. But one day he entered his toilet. He cried and he said, God, please. He almost killed his mother out of anger. The second time, he almost killed his friend. Ben Carson that we all know. But one day he said, if I continue like this, I'm not going to become a great doctor. Because one day he might get angry in the hospital and slap a doctor or a patient. He knew that his character candle was going to ruin his life candle. He said he entered his bedroom and he cried in his toilet. He said, God, take away anger from me. This was somebody that was ready to change. So you have to ask yourself, what is it inside of me that has to change? And then talk to God about it. He said he was there for 3 hours. He said, God, if you don't heal me today, I'm not going to leave this room. He said after a while, go and read up his story. You guys say that Ben Carson is smart, but there's so many other things about Ben Carson that everybody has to know. He loved God and he was somebody that was ready to change. So he said after a while, he felt as if something left his body. And then when he got up, he just felt that anger was not in him anymore. He said even these days when he tries to get angry, he can never be angry because God dealt with it. You are the only person that can turn on your character candle. You have to identify those things that you do that are wrong, and then you have to ask God to help you. And you have to be willing to change. Once you're willing to change, God is going to sort it out. I tell you, go and read Think Big. Ben Carson wrote it. He wrote his life story. So those are the things. So your homework is write down all the character traits that you know. These are the things that are in me, and I am the only one that knows that these things are wrong. And then you ask your parents or your friends, or your sisters and siblings, tell me what are the things that I do. I'm not going to get angry. Tell me the things that I do that are wrong. That if I could change, I'll be a better person. Tell them to be honest with you, and don't feel bad when they tell you. Sometimes my children tell me, Mom, there's something that you do that is not good. I'm like, what is it? And they'll tell me, I'm like, okay, I didn't know. I want to get angry. Something will tell me, better listen. You know everything about you. And I'll listen and I'll try to change. You are the only person that can light up your character candle when you are ready to take correction. So open up your heart. Talk to your parents. Talk, even if you have your nanny. Go to your nanny and say to your nanny, tell me the truth. What are some things that I do that are not right? Your nanny, just tell me the truth. Then write them down. Then write out by the other side how you want to change, what you're going to use to replace them. Then your next homework, you're going to read the story of Joseph. I'm not going to tell you about Joseph so that I'll be sure. I want to see if you can identify his character traits. Read the story of Joseph, then write out all his candles, his character candles, all the things that he did well. And that was why Joseph had a character candle that was leadership. But then he had a life candle that was leadership, and then he had a character candle that was phenomenal. Joseph had excellent character traits. In every season of his life, he was good. His character was good. And that is why his life candle became outstanding, because his character candle was outstanding. Good